Well, this just might be the worst personal news President Obama's gotten in years. A new poll showing President Obama is the worst president since World War II. Now, that's according to 33% of American voters in the latest Quinnipiac poll. But it gets worse. 45% of voters think America would be in better shape if Governor Mitt Romney had won. Ouch! Representative Jason Chaffetz joins us. Good evening, sir.
Hey, Greta.
Why do you think that this poll is such a condemnation of the president's presidency?
Because America's catching up that candidate Barack Obama, what he said was not true, and that what President Obama does is very different. So what President Obama does is just so different than how he campaigned. The things that he said were going to happen about, oh, your health care costs are going to go down, what we're going to do in the Middle East is going to be better. There is nothing in the world that is going the right direction, in the direction of what the president said, and it appears as if he's just sort of given up. He's telegraphing to the American people that he really doesn't care about Congress. He doesn't care about working through the process. And that's offensive to a lot of people.
Is it part of being president that a sitting president is going to have lousy numbers? Now, I will note that President George Bush 43, he's not that far off from the bad numbers. President Obama has 33% say he's the worst. President 43 says 28%. And if you go down the list, some of the best presidents are Reagan and Bill Clinton and JFK. It's almost like the farther away you get from the job, the better the American people like you.
Well, I also think that the advent of the internet and the way we're able to communicate, you're able to put statements side by side in a much more and make those readily available. And there's nothing worse than taking a candidate Barack Obama's words and then transposing or putting them right next to the words of what he actually does. And then you see the contrast and the hypocrisy, and it just drives people nuts.
Do you agree with this poll? Do you agree that he's the worst? That's the first part of my question since World War II. And if so, what could he do to turn that around so that you wouldn't vote him as the worst? I realize you're a Republican, but I'm curious, is there anything he could do at this point?
Well, try to work with Congress and come to some sort of compromise. I mean, I'm out there trying at least to put forward some things to work with him in a bipartisan way, but there is no reciprocity. There is no back and forth between us and the White House. He just says, when he looks in the camera, just like today and yesterday, saying, I'm just going to go it alone and I don't care what Congress says and they do nothing. That's just sort of the attitude that when my third grader, once upon a time, she took that attitude. It drove me. I said, no, that's not acceptable. Your approach, your attitude is everything. And right now, this president shows an attitude that's just not conducive to actually getting things done.
Well, it is a lousy strategy to insult your opponent. I got to concede that, and I don't see any sort of flattering words coming out of the White House or President Obama towards Congress. You think he hates you?
I don't think he cares about us. I don't think he lifts a finger to try to figure out what it is we want to do. You remember the first 2 years of the Obama presidency, they had the White House, they had the House, they had the Senate. They didn't do a darn thing on immigration. Fast forward to 112th Congress, we actually passed 2 immigration bills. Do you think he ever reached out and worked with us? One of them was my bill. We passed it with nearly 390 votes. They didn't do a darn thing about it. Now they turn around in the 113th Congress and say, oh, well, Congress is doing nothing. Really, Mr. President? Why don't you work with somebody who actually sponsored a bill and wants to actually have some reform? I'm not going to give him my principles, but you can see how he just doesn't care.
Congressman, thank you, sir.